been outside lately, chances are you've already heard a few new bird songs. Robins, finches, and red-winged blackbirds are all calling out and letting you know it's the start of spring migration. But the best is yet to come. For this month's Chirp Chat, Lake Effect's Excret Nunez spoke with Aubrey Fulces, a naturalist and the children's events coordinator at the Schlitz Audubon Nature Center. She explains why birds migrate and what makes Wisconsin a special place to see visiting birds.
I am so excited to be speaking with you today for the third episode of Chirp Chat. It's sunny outside. It's so nice. It's spring. Birds are flying up north and migrating through Wisconsin. But Aubrey, I want to know, why is that? Why do birds migrate?
That is a great question. So migration is basically just any large-scale movement of an animal population from one point to another. Birds are obviously the most famous for it. Over half of the birds in the United States actually migrate to some degree. And contrary to popular belief, a lot of people think it has to do with cold, with winter. They, leave to warmer times, but it really has to do with resources. So the two main reasons that birds migrate are food and nesting sites. So a lot of our insect eaters, they leave Wisconsin in the winter because their food disappears. Their insects are gone in the wintertime. And then they come back because once the bugs come back, we have great nesting locations they can take advantage of. Because if they all stayed down in the tropics, they'd be overrun. There wouldn't be any real estate available. So they all come back and find a place to nest up in the more northern hemisphere up by us.
I know something that I've also wondered for a while is, how do birds even know where they're going when it's time to migrate up north or down south? Are there any routes or indicators birds follow?
Yeah, that is a great question, and scientists are still trying to figure out the definitive answer because we can't just ask them, unfortunately. There are some definitive routes that they use. They'll use geographic markers. So one of the main geographic markers in this area is the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes. So it creates kind of this pathway called a flyway. And there are 4 different flyways in the United States on each coast, kind of along the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains, and then we're in the Mississippi Flyway, so it goes up from the Gulf of Mexico, following the Mississippi River, and we're kind of bordered on each side with the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River, and it goes all the way up to Canada. So they'll use that. They'll use the sun. A lot of birds actually migrate at night, so they use the stars to help them find their way. There's research that says the indigo bunting uses the North Star to find its way when it's migrating. They'll use magnetic fields. They can actually tell, the parts of a compass. So there's a lot of different ways that they are able to find their way from one location to another.
And you mentioned the Mississippi Flyway, where Wisconsin is in that flyway route. What's unique about it?
Yeah, so it's really the only one that doesn't use a mountain range as one of the kind of barriers. So because it uses a lot of water, we get a lot of waterfowl, so ducks, geese, swans, cranes, they really like to use this flyway because a lot of our birds, some of our ducks, they really never land on grass. They only will ever land on water. So it allows them clear areas that they can stop, like the Lake Michigan is a great stopover site, the Mississippi River, all of our, thousands of lakes that we have in Wisconsin, they can stop at on the way. So that's what makes it a little bit more unique compared to, just having a coast on either side.
Yeah, and so that makes sense. Like when you're going on a long road trip journey, you make pit stops.
Exactly.
What do they do when they might stop through Wisconsin or here in Milwaukee?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. I mean, if you're taking a week-long road trip, you have some stops that are like a gas station, so a really quick stop to pick up food. And then some stops might be a little bit more like a hotel or a bed and breakfast where you stay for a couple days to a week if you can have a really nice area. So around here at our stopover sites like Schlitz Audubon Nature Center, we're a little bit more that, bed and breakfast, that hotel for the birds. We're a really great resort for them to stop at because we have all of the great resources with food. We have protection from predators. We have shelter. We have water. And so usually they're going to kind of stop here And sometimes they'll stop here and nest. Sometimes they'll keep going on their journey. It really depends on the species.
Wow, I had no idea that sometimes they nest,
Yep,
on their stops too.
Yep, we do have some birds that they can keep going up into Canada, but we are still in the range where they're considered breeding areas. So then if they like it enough here, they'll stop, and this is where they end their migration journey, and then they stay here all summer.
Do all birds follow one route or another route?
Yeah, so there's different levels of migration, all the way from, resident birds who don't migrate at all. So like our birds that stay here all winter and then stay here through the summer, like cardinals, chickadees. And then they can go all the way to what are considered long distance migrants that are traveling thousands of miles for every migration journey. Wow. And that can be something like one of our warblers, the blackpoll warbler, will travel thousands of miles, including over the Atlantic Ocean, and they can fly up to 100 miles per day. So there's really a range. And some birds will just migrate just far enough as they need to find food. Those are our short distance migrants. So they're not necessarily following a path. They're more going to where the food is and then hanging out there. And then you have our medium to long distance migrants that are going to follow a little bit clearer of a pathway. And a lot of times they'll go to the same place in Central America every winter and then come back and nest in the same place up here every summer. So you might be getting the same bird over a few years that's making that journey.
That's so neat. And I know you already mentioned a couple of birds, but what are some neat migratory birds that people might see around this time of year?
Definitely. So we already have some of our migrators here. Some of the earliest ones are our red-winged blackbirds. I believe here we first started hearing them right in the beginning of March. The males come back first to claim their territories. And then the females are going to come back later once the bugs are out a little bit more. And then she'll play a little game of Bachelorette and pick which territory she wants to go to. And we've already gotten our turkey vultures back. You can see them, the really big black birds soaring, barely flapping over our heads, over in the sky. And we've already gotten our kinglets back. They're very tiny little birds that we see fluttering around pine trees. Probably the pinnacle of spring migration to a birder is warbler migration. So warblers are these tiny neotropical birds, and they winter down in Central and South America, and then they come up through that flyway. And there are a couple that will nest here. Otherwise, they're really only here for maybe a week before they keep going up to Canada, and then they nest in northern Canada. And the beauty of them is that there are so many different types. We have recorded 36 different kinds of warblers here at Schlitz Audubon Nature Center, and they're very colorful. They come in vibrant yellows, and some of them have a little bit of green, some of them have orange, and they're just really fun birds to watch. So that's kind of what a lot of birders look forward to, is that warbler migration, where they're just waiting for them to show up, and then you see them all over the trails looking for warblers.
It sounds so beautiful and so exciting. I actually don't think I've ever seen a warbler, or maybe I've never identified one before. So I'm kind of excited. So when they are coming through, and these birds are already coming through, how can people take care of these migratory visitor birds?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I mentioned, a lot of birds migrate at night, and one of the biggest hazards that they're facing now are bright lights happening at night. So especially in things like skyscrapers, really big business buildings that are leaving their lights on overnight, it really confuses them, especially if they're trying to track using the stars or anything like that.
Right.
And so a lot of fatalities happen when they run into those lights at night. So there are some cities around the country that are starting campaigns called like Lights Out to basically turn the lights off during those peak migration times to help the birds when they migrate through. So that's one way companies or businesses or even individual people can help out. But then just providing them a good stopover site. We talked about the bed and breakfast. Make your backyard a great bed and breakfast for birds. Have water available for them, have different types of food. Sometimes the birds that are migrating through might be more interested in eating bugs or fruit, so you can have a good diversity at your bird feeders for them to grab a nice bite to eat. Have some good shelters for them, have some native plantings that they can have and live in and just kind of rest on their journey.
So as we wrap up, I know we talked about the Schlitz Audubon Nature Center being one of the wonderful places to come see migratory birds, but what are a couple other places people can go check out?
So during that peak migration, you're probably going to be able to find some of these cool migrators at any green space in your area. So checking out some of the county parks that have a little bit more forest, looking by the Milwaukee River and seeing some of those birds in that habitat. And then if you want to take a little bit further of a trip, we're pretty close to a national wildlife refuge called Horicon Marsh, which is known for getting these really cool migrants like whooping cranes and pelicans and some of these kind of bigger, more rare birds. And that's a really fun place you can check out that's a day trip away.
So at the end of every Chirp Chat, I love for guests to shine a spotlight on a bird for the month. So Aubrey, what's a bird you'd like to highlight this month?
Yeah, so I want to highlight one of our most notable and recognizable migratory birds, and that would be the Baltimore Oriole. So the Baltimore Oriole will spend its winter down in Central America. It actually likes to hang out near where they grow things like coffee and cocoa. And it'll migrate back up here and it'll actually nest in Wisconsin. So it is this blackbird that has this beautiful, bright orange plumage that is unlike pretty much any other bird we really see in Wisconsin. Like you see this bird that has this bright orange and it's just absolutely mesmerizing. And they have these beautiful, bright, whistling songs. And they like to sit at the tops of trees and just sing their little hearts out. And I really want to highlight them because they are actually a fruit eater. So down in Central America, they're eating a lot of ripe fruit. And one of the ways that you can help them out and even attract them to your backyard is by putting out things like oranges. So you'll hear oranges for Orioles. So you literally just slice an orange in half and you stick it on a stake by your bird feeder and it attracts these really, really cool, bright tropical birds to your backyard.
Oranges for Orioles.
Yep.
I will remember that. Aubrey, thank you so much for speaking with me today and for getting listeners excited about spring migration.
Yeah, definitely. I always say spring migration is like the start of the party. All the birds are coming down and it's just a really, really fun time.
Let's get the party started.
Let's get the party started.
Aubrey Fulsis is a naturalist and the children's event coordinator at the Schlitz Audubon Nature Center. She spoke with Lake Effect's Excret Nunez for a new monthly series we call Chirp Chat. At WUWM.com, you can hear more of this conversation and find last month's Chirp Chat, all about the importance of bird names.